suspect who opened fire at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner has now been charged with the attempted assassination of U.S. President Donald Trump and could face life in prison. The White House blamed violence on systematic demonization of President Trump as the root of Saturday's shooting. The U.S. envoy to the United Nations has called for a multinational coalition to secure the Strait of Hormuz as Iran draws closer to Russia. Iran's top diplomat met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and said U.S. leaders want to negotiate because they have achieved none of their goals in the war. President Lee Jae-myung held a cabinet meeting with his aides this morning and stressed the importance of broadening Korea's diplomatic outreach to the global south, adding that his recent trip to India and Vietnam helped strengthen cooperation across a wide range of areas. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin today in the United States. The man accused of opening fire at an event attended by President Donald Trump and members of his cabinet on Saturday has been formally indicted and faces up to life in prison. The White House blamed political rhetoric for the attack and ordered an urgent security review ahead of the nation's 250th anniversary celebrations. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
The suspect in the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner has been charged with the attempted assassination of U.S. President Donald Trump and could face life in prison. On Monday local time, the U.S. Department of Justice formally indicted Cole Thomas Allen.
Today, the Department of Justice filed 3 federal charges in United States District Court against Cole Thomas Allen. The first count is attempted assassination of the President of the United States. This count is punishable by up to life in prison.
Allen faces 2 additional charges: the interstate transportation of a firearm to commit a felony and the discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence in what U.S. prosecutors called a premeditated attack. Officials confirmed Allen traveled across state lines from California and positioned himself just 1 floor above the ballroom where the president was attending the event. He was apprehended carrying a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, a .38 caliber semi-automatic handgun, and at least 3 knives. The White House swiftly condemned the attack, pointing to a newly discovered manifesto written by the suspect that detailed a clear intent to inflict massive harm on the president and other administration officials.
This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party and even some in the media.
The shooting triggered a security emergency in Washington, with the breach coming as the United States prepares to host a series of major public events and large-scale gatherings to celebrate the 250th anniversary of its founding. To address vulnerabilities, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is convening an urgent meeting early this week with top leadership from the Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service to completely overhaul protection protocols for the upcoming national celebrations. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations is calling for a coalition to secure the Strait of Hormuz while accusing Iran of hostage-taking. However, Tehran says it's not bound by the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, asserting Iran's sovereignty over the route as it moves closer to Russia. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations is calling for a multinational coalition to restore safe navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, accusing Iran of unlawfully disrupting one of the world's most vital shipping routes. Addressing a UN Security Council session on maritime security, Mike Waltz stressed that global waterways must remain open and cannot be controlled by any single nation, warning that Tehran is using the strait as a geopolitical leverage with far-reaching consequences. In response, Iran's ambassador to the United Nations, Amir Saeed Iravani, asserted Iran's sovereignty, particularly in the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. He emphasized that Iran is not bound by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, except for provisions recognized as customary international law.
Iran is not a party to the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Accordingly, it is not bound by its treaty-based provisions except to the extent that specific rules reflected therein are universally recognized as customary international law.
At the same time, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi suggested a shift in tone, saying Tehran is considering negotiations. He argued that despite the United States' global power, Washington failed to achieve its objectives in the conflict, prompting renewed calls for dialogue. Araghchi made the remarks during a visit to St. Petersburg for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin said he hoped Iran would overcome what he called a difficult period and that peace should ultimately prevail.
Of course, we very much hope that based on this courage and will for independence, the Iranian people will, under the leadership of a new leader, make it through this difficult period of trials and that peace will follow.
Russia has positioned itself as a potential mediator in the crisis, following U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran that Moscow has strongly condemned. It has also proposed storing Iran's enriched uranium as a way to ease tensions, though Washington has not accepted the offer. The growing alignment between Moscow and Tehran comes amid deepening strategic ties. The two countries signed a 20-year partnership agreement last year, and Russia is currently constructing additional nuclear reactors at Iran's Bashir facility, the country's only nuclear power plant. Araghchi reaffirmed that cooperation between the two nations will continue to expand, and thanked Moscow for its ongoing support. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to broaden Korea's diplomatic outreach to the global south. Presiding over a cabinet meeting this morning, Lee said that the war in the Middle East has accelerated a structural reshaping of the global economy and security landscape. He stressed that Seoul must adopt a more strategic and flexible approach by reducing over-reliance on specific regions and steadily expanding its diplomatic options. He added that its recent trip to India and Vietnam helped strengthen cooperation across a wide range of areas, calling it a positive outcome for the country's long-term national interests. And President Lee Jae-myung also met with Google DeepMind co-founder and CEO Charles Hassabis on Monday to discuss the responsible use of artificial intelligence. Hosting the entrepreneur at the Blue House, President Lee threw him a question on whether AI will be used in a way that benefits humanity's welfare or in a way that harms it. When the president asked about some of the malfunctions of Google Gemini, Hassabis noted the importance of setting guardrails. Google has agreed to open a so-called AI campus in Seoul within the year to expand research cooperation. An appellate court is set to deliver a verdict on Tuesday in the case of former First Lady Kim Gun-hee over multiple charges, including accepting luxury goods. The Seoul High Court will rule after both Kim and Special Counsel Min Jung-gi appealed a lower court decision that sentenced her to 20 months in prison. In the first trial, Kim was found guilty of receiving a luxury handbag and a diamond necklace from the Unification Church in 2022. She was acquitted of stock manipulation and political funding charges involving former President Yoon Suk-yeol, with the court ruling there was no clear evidence of involvement or financial gain. Tuesday's ruling will determine whether that sentence and acquittal stand. And BTS has earned platinum certification from France's National Syndicate of Phonographic Publishing for its latest full-length album Arirang, according to the group's agency on Tuesday. The certification is awarded to albums that surpass the equivalent of 100,000 sales, combining metrics including physical album sales and streaming. It marks BTS's fourth platinum-certified group album, with the milestone achieved about a month after its release. That's faster than previous albums Map of the Soul 7 and Proof, which each took more than a year. BTS kicked off its North American tour Arirang in Tampa on Saturday. K-beauty is gaining even more ground in Europe, sitting center stage at one of the world's biggest beauty expos. The largest ever Korea pavilion brought together hundreds of products, drawing crowds of buyers from across the continent. Our Kim Sa-young reports.
A visitor puts on a black sheet mask, then peels it off moments later to reveal brighter, more radiant skin. The demonstration is drawing large crowds at Cosmoprof Worldwide Bologna, Italy, the world's oldest and one of the most influential beauty expos in the world. More than 3,000 companies from 65 countries are taking part this year. At the center of it all is Korea Pavilion, put together by the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency and 6 partner organizations. The K-beauty rise in Europe has been dramatic. Exports to the EU have jumped from $280 million in 2022 to $1.13 billion in 2025, more than quadrupling in just 3 years.
When people hear made in Korea now, they immediately think of quality. Korean brands have built a very strong reputation in the market.
Along with the widespread perception that Korean people have good skin, local consumers say K-beauty products stand out for their high quality and affordable prices. What began with skincare is now expanding quickly into makeup products and AI-powered beauty devices. During the expo, companies visiting the Korea Pavilion held export consultations worth a combined $20 million.
We already have a large number of deals in the works, and we expect total contracts to come to around $20 million.
This year's event also featured a separate K-indie brand showcase, designed to help smaller Korean companies make their first move into overseas markets. And with demand for Korean beauty products continuing to grow, the expo is expected to give K-beauty even more momentum as it expands across the European market. Kim Seoyoung, Arirang News.
Vintage and re-commerce isn't just a trend, but is now a steady form of consumption here in Korea. Nowhere is this more evident than at Dongmyo Flea Market in central Seoul, which has now grown into a vibrant cultural hotspot where shoppers of all ages come together to hunt for timeless value. Our Chung Il-im was there.
Entering Dongmyo Flea Market in central Seoul, the atmosphere stands out. Vendors sell a wide range of goods, from vintage watches to used electronics, but the biggest draw is piles of secondhand clothing. Shoppers dig through them for shirts, trousers, and jackets, usually priced between 2,000 and 5,000 won, about $2 per item. This place was once considered an affordable clothing market for older generations, but the demographic has noticeably shifted in recent years.
I came here to relax after my school exams. I like the old vintage and retro vibe, and I'm hoping to buy a designer jacket today.
I heard Dongmyo is famous for its vintage items, so I came looking for some bracelets and rings.
For young people, Dongmyo has become more than just a place to shop. Spurred by social media posts and visits from K-pop stars, the area has evolved into a cultural landmark for experience consumption, the act of digging for your own personal finds.
My friends recommend this place. It's very cool. We bought a suitcase, a clothes, and a cap.
But the hunting for ground-level bargains isn't the only reason people come here.
Dongmyo not only has a variety of clothing, but is also famous for pieces that are timeless, such as limited edition brand clothes. And many shoppers come here to add these to their fashion collection.
This expanding multi-generational customer base is bringing a fresh wave of economic vitality to the local merchants.
We see teenagers as young as 15 to people in their early 20s as customers these days. But there are still many older folks, so people of all ages really come here. Sales were solid, but have increased since the weather has become warmer.
With its unique blend of history and modern fashion trends, Dongmyo continues to solidify its position as the center of South Korea's growing vintage market. Chung Il-im, Arirang News.
Wild greens in the mountainous Gangwon-do province are in season. There, farmers are harvesting spring wild greens, including Siberian onion. Our Cha Yeon-kyung has more.
Spring has arrived in the dense pine forest. Soaked by the gentle spring rain, the broadleaves have sprouted up. This is Siberian onion, also widely known as wild garlic or byonginamu. As soon as day breaks, farmers hurry to begin harvesting.
If you look around, you'll see plenty of nut pines and pine trees. The blending of these scents gives Siberian onion a great flavor.
With flavors reminiscent of durup, ginseng, and even beef, goat's beard, also called 눈개승마 or 삼나물 for its 3 distinct flavors, has begun to sprout. It has recently surged in popularity thanks to its unique, chewy texture. Both Siberian onion and goat's beard grow naturally in the wild without the use of fertilizers or pesticides.
If you're planning to make pickles, it's actually better to use leaves harvested a bit later. Those slightly thicker leaves result in a better flavor.
Thanks to the significant temperature swings on Seoraksan Mountain, the texture and aroma of these wild greens are considered the best of their kind. These seasonal wild greens from Gangwon-do province are available for only 1 month in April. They are sold through home shopping channels as well as local roadside rest stops. Wild greens from Seoraksan Mountain are ready to grace people's dinner table and revive their spring appetite. Cha Young-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Britain's King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived in Washington on Monday for a 4-day state visit, the first by a British monarch to the United States in 20 years. President Trump received the royal couple at the White House on Monday afternoon. The schedule includes a congressional address on Tuesday, a state dinner, and a visit to New York to honor the victims of the September 11th attacks. The visit comes as U.S.-UK relations are strained over disagreements on the Iran war, with Trump criticizing Britain for its lack of support for the U.S.-Israeli offensive. President Trump on Monday called for ABC to fire the late-night host Jimmy Kimmel after Kimmel made a joke about Melania ahead of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. In a parody segment last Thursday about the upcoming dinner, Kimmel said Melania, quote, had a glow like an expectant widow. A shooting at the dinner on Saturday led to a Secret Service agent being wounded. Melania on Monday called Kimmel's remarks, quote, corrosive, and urged ABC to take action. Trump called the joke far beyond acceptable and demanded Kimmel's immediate removal. ABC and Disney have not responded to requests for comment. A small passenger plane crashed on Monday near South Sudan's capital, Juba, killing all 14 people on board. The Cessna aircraft lost contact with air traffic controllers 28 minutes into the flight. Preliminary reports indicate bad weather and low visibility as possible factors. Among those killed were 2 Kenyans and 12 South Sudanese. A team has been dispatched to the crash site to support emergency services. Nearly 2,000 years after Mount Vesuvius buried the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, artificial intelligence is now rebuilding the face of one of its victims. Pompeii Archaeological Park released an image on Monday showing what a man found near one of the city's gates may have looked like in his final moments crouching for cover as the volcano erupted. His remains were found alongside a terracotta bowl believed to have been his only shield against the falling debris. He was also carrying a lamp and 10 bronze coins, suggesting he was trying to flee when the eruption overtook him. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
The sky remains heavy and gray across Seoul and much of the country today. Lingering drizzle in central regions should let up soon, but Jeju-do Island and Gangwon-do Province could see rain into the afternoon. However, the risk of fire is not gone yet. Recent rain did help to ease the dryness in the capital area, but dry weather advisories remain in place for many of the central regions. And with gusty winds blowing nationwide, fire danger remains a concern. And temperatures will be lower nationwide today. Afternoon highs in Seoul will be a few degrees lower than the seasonal average, and tomorrow morning will be chillier than today. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 17 degrees Celsius. Gyeongju and Busan will be topping out at 22 degrees. Air quality will be good nationwide all day today. Skies turn brighter starting tomorrow, and a stretch of calmer spring weather follows. Do expect warmer afternoons and cooler mornings and wide day-to-night temperature swings for the next several days.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.